You watch a friend get buried, you mourn the loss, and, eventually you just move on with your life.
Right. That's just a natural progression of things.
Exactly. But then, let's say a decade later, you're standing in the middle of this massive outdoor music festival. The bass is rattling your ribcage, the lights are blinding, and you look up at the main stage.
Oh, I think I see where this is going.
Yeah, that same friend is up there, headlining the entire event, looking better and more vibrant than they ever did before. I mean, that sounds like a plot to a surreal sci-fi movie, right?
It really does. But we aren't talking about a person here, are we?
No, we're not. What if we were talking about an entire genre of music? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission feels almost like a cultural detective story.
It really does, because we are unpacking a massive, highly surprising resurrection happening right now in the year 2026.
Yeah, and guiding our exploration today is this thick stack of editorial data and cultural reporting from 786 Music Publishing LLC. They're a deeply respected music intelligence and publishing entity based out of Miami, Florida.
And the data they've compiled from the ground level of the industry is pointing to a phenomenon that most music historians and honestly purists thought was genuinely impossible.
Right.
We are looking at a complete reversal of cultural death.
Which brings us to our core topic today. Progressive house music is officially, undeniably back. And for you listening, we really need to set the stakes of what that actually means.
Definitely. Because for those who aren't steeped in the electronic scene, progressive house used to be this very specific thing.
Yeah, it's typically defined by a steady, driving four-on-the-floor beat. But instead of those quick, jarring beat drops you hear in other genres, it relies on sweeping, emotional synthesizer melodies.
Right. Melodies that slowly build tension over 7 or 8 minutes. It's a journey.
Or at least it used to be. Because this is a genre that the underground electronic music scene had entirely dismissed. I mean, the tastemakers literally read it its last rites, put it in the ground, and declared it culturally dead years ago.
Completely dead. But the 2026 data from 786 Music shows it's dominating festival lineups, headlining DJ sets, and just completely taking over the charts again.
Which is wild. And that brings us to the central tension of our analysis today.
Exactly. We are looking at the mechanics of cultural revival to determine if this 2026 movement is just a cheap, fleeting wave of nostalgia. Is this just a cash grab targeting people who want to remember the good old days?
Right. Or is this a genuine, evolving cultural moment that actually demands to be taken seriously? We also want to figure out what this resurrection actually means for how you, the listener, consume trends in your own life.
Because it begs the question, are the things society aggressively declares uncool ever really dead forever?
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can figure out why progressive house is coming back in 2026, we have to establish what exactly died in the first place.
Yeah, we have to look at the historical timeline laid out by this 786 Music reporting.
Right. So the genre originated in the early 1990s. And for a long time, it was this beloved, defining sound of the dark, late-night underground club scene.
It was very niche, but then it climbed to this massive commercial peak. It just exploded into the mainstream.
Oh, totally. It became inescapable. You'd hear it in car commercials, in shopping malls, at mainstream pop concerts. The sound just became completely ubiquitous.
But that exact commercial success triggered a severe backlash from the underground. It led to its total dismissal by the core dance music community.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this dynamic, and the best analogy I can come up with is a beloved indie film director. You know the exact type, right?
Oh, absolutely. The one who makes those brilliant, gritty, low-budget films that a small group of obsessive fans absolutely worship.
Exactly. But then Hollywood comes calling. The director makes a massive, multi-million-dollar blockbuster, and the studio executives just smooth out all the gritty, interesting dialogue to make the movie palatable for a wider audience.
And immediately, those original fans disown the director for selling out.
Yes. And taking your indie director analogy into the music studio, we see the exact same mechanical shift. Major record labels took the weird, syncopated bass lines and complex drum patterns of early progressive house and just smoothed them out for pop radio.
Right. They threw these massive, cheesy pop vocals over the top. The function of the music fundamentally changed.
It went from being a nuanced late-night club experience designed to make a darkroom move together to, well, a stadium sing-along designed to sell energy drinks.
It's a drastic shift, but I want to push back on the concept of that backlash for a second.
Go ahead.
Looking at the history the data provides, I have to wonder if that backlash was just pure gatekeeping snobbery. Like, were the underground fans simply angry that they had to share their secret club with the mainstream frat guys?
Or had the actual objective quality of the music degraded during that commercial peak?
What's fascinating here is the psychology of the underground ecosystem itself. The underground doesn't reject the mainstream purely out of spite. It rejects it because the sonic complexity is sacrificed for scale.
So when Progressive House hit that massive commercial peak, the production was literally simplified.
Exactly. The layers of intricate synthesizers were stripped away to make room for a catchy 15-second vocal hook that would play well on a smartphone speaker.
So the underground's dismissal certainly had elements of elitist snobbery, but it was primarily a reaction to the music losing the architectural complexity that made it special in the first place.
Precisely. The very thing that made it unique was stripped away for the sake of palatability. It lost its soul to appeal to the masses.
Which is a shame. But the cultural reporting from 786 Music documents this life cycle perfectly. They synthesize a very counterintuitive point here.
Yeah, they argue that massive commercial burnout wasn't a tragedy for the genre. It was actually a necessary structural collapse.
Wait, necessary? How is dying a necessary phase for a piece of culture?
Well, it forced the genre to go completely dormant. It had to be vehemently rejected so it could step out of the blinding mainstream spotlight.
Okay, I think I see. That dormancy period is a crucial incubation phase.
Exactly. It allowed Progressive House to shed all of that mainstream baggage, the cheesy pop vocals, the overplayed radio anthems, the associations with bottle service VIP clubs.
So by vanishing entirely, it created a cultural vacuum. Only by going away could it eventually be rediscovered and reset its cultural value for a totally new generation in 2026.
Right. It's almost like crop rotation in farming. You have to let the field life fallow for a few seasons before you can plant there again.
Otherwise, the soil is completely depleted and nothing will grow. I like that.
And I'll take that crop rotation idea a step further. It wasn't just that the soil needed a rest, the topsoil had become actively toxic.
Toxic, really?
Yeah, the genre was so heavily associated with oversaturated, cringeworthy pop hits that any self-respecting underground DJ wouldn't be caught dead playing a track labeled Progressive House. The toxic associations literally had to wash away with time.
Which brings us out of the history books and right into the present day. Because while the underground opinions and psychological theories of the past are interesting, you absolutely cannot argue with the hard, undeniable numbers of 2026.
You really can't. The 786 music data makes a seamless transition from historical narrative to quantitative metrics. We are looking at a truly data-driven resurrection.
Yeah, the numbers provided by the Miami publisher are what legitimize this entire conversation. This isn't just an anecdotal feeling from a few nostalgic DJs whispering that, oh, maybe the sound is coming back.
Far from it. The data proving this revival is staggering. We are seeing massive, sustained movements on the Beatport top genres charts, specifically for underground electronic music.
And for you listening, think of Beatport essentially as the Billboard Hot 100, but strictly for working club DJs who are actively buying tracks to play in their sets tonight.
Right, it's a very practical metric. On top of that, there's a huge surge in streaming numbers across consumer platforms.
And maybe most visibly, there is a massive return to global festival booking trends in 2026. The artists making this music are physically playing it out to tens of thousands of people again.
But I have a major pushback on these numbers because we all know how fast digital shifts happen today.
Okay, what's your pushback?
Do platforms like Beatport actually reflect what the underground is doing, or do they dictate it?
The pervasive question of the algorithm. It is the shadow over all modern cultural data.
Exactly. If a dormant genre suddenly hits an algorithm or gets artificially pushed onto a trending chart by a playlist curator, doesn't that just create a closed feedback loop?
So the chart says Progressive House is popular, so DJs feel like they have to buy it and play it to stay relevant.
Which then forces festivals to book those DJs, which makes the genre look popular. Are these numbers a reflection of real human interest, or is the algorithm just playing a trick on the culture?
That is a highly critical curiosity, and it really gets to the heart of how any music is consumed today. But when we synthesize the specific data points from 786 Music, we see clear evidence that this is not a closed algorithmic loop.
Really? How so?
Well, the chart movements and the streaming surges are certainly amplified by algorithms once they start, but they require a genuine spark of human interest to ignite.
That makes sense in theory. The algorithm can throw fuel on the fire, but it can't strike the match. But do the 786 music reports actually show evidence of this translating to the physical world?
Yeah, because I've personally been to festivals where a supposedly chart-topping algorithmic viral track comes on the speakers, and the crowd looks completely bored to tears.
Right, people just stand there holding their phones. Are we sure this isn't just a digital mirage?
The publisher's data tracks the translation from digital to physical very closely. They document the difference between passive streaming, where a track is just background noise on a Spotify playlist while you answer emails and active club engagement.
Okay, so the digital metrics we are discussing are directly translating into physical ticket sales for underground events.
Furthermore, 2026's underground dance music culture operates as a true hybrid ecosystem. Digital trends don't stay trapped in our phones.
If a DJ plays a viral track at 3 a.m. in a dark warehouse and the crowd stops dancing, that DJ immediately drops the track from their rotation, regardless of what the Beatport chart says.
Exactly. The physical reaction of a sweating, dancing crowd shatters the algorithmic illusion. The data proves the crowds are actually moving to this music.
You can fake 1 million streams with a bot farm, but you cannot fake 1,000 people losing their minds in a festival tent.
The physical reaction is the ultimate lie detector. So the numbers unequivocally prove that progressive house is back. But that brings us to the most pressing question raised by this source material.
Right. What exactly is back? Are we talking about the exact same sound we had in 1998, or is it something entirely new?
The 786 music reporting is definitive on this point. The 2026 wave is strictly different, both sonically and culturally, from the version that burned out decades ago. It is not a replication.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources highlight that this new wave is being driven by key reviving artists who are utilizing entirely new independent electronic music production techniques.
Yeah, the 2026 version of the genre is defined by specific, modern production characteristics. When I read this, it made me think of a classic vintage car.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Say you have this beautiful 1960s chassis. On the outside, it looks completely retro. It has those sweeping lines, the classic paint job. It hits you right in the nostalgia.
Right, you recognize it instantly.
But then you open the hood, and instead of a leaky, gas-guzzling carburetor, a mechanic has dropped in a fully modern, high-performance electric engine.
The vintage car analogy works perfectly as a starting point, but let's take it a step further. It's not just that the mechanics under the hood are cutting edge, it is that the roads themselves have fundamentally changed.
Oh, you mean the physical environment where this music is experienced has completely transformed?
Exactly. The sound systems at a 2026 festival are these massive, highly engineered line array behemoths that simply did not exist during the genre's first peak.
So if you play an original track from 1998 on a modern 2026 speaker system, it sounds flat, muddy, and hollow. The new producers had to change the engineering just to survive the modern physical environment.
So they aren't just updating the sound to be cool, they are updating it out of acoustic necessity. What do these modern production techniques actually look like in practice?
Well, in the 90s, producers relied heavily on bulky analog synthesizers. Those machines gave a very warm human sound, but there was a lot of frequency bleed.
Right. The bass would muddy up the middle tones and the high notes would just get lost in the mix.
Today, the artists driving this 2026 revival are using advanced spatial audio plugins and granular synthesis.
Granular synthesis, for example, allows a producer to take a tiny fraction of a sound, like a millisecond of a vocal or synth, and stretch it, manipulate it, and turn it into an entirely new texture.
This technology allows them to take those same emotional, sweeping melodies that define progressive house, but make them sound incredibly crisp. There is total separation between the crisp hi-hats and the deep, rumbling sub-bass.
The nostalgia of the progressive house name and those sweeping melodies acts as the shiny vintage exterior that gets listeners in the door.
But the new 2026 production techniques, the granular synthesis, the extreme low-end clarity, are the modern electric engine that actually makes them stay on the dance floor.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we hit on the exact tension between a true cultural movement and mere nostalgia.
Yeah, nostalgia is a very powerful hook, but it is a terrible anchor. It will grab your attention for a moment, but it cannot hold it for a 2-hour DJ set.
If these artists in 2026 were just doing a pure copy-paste of the 90s commercial sound, the underground scene would reject it immediately.
The audience's ears have evolved. They demand modern sonic fidelity.
Exactly. The old sound structures are being completely recontextualized with modern engineering. That is the dividing line between a genuine evolution and a lazy, nostalgic cash grab.
which sets us up to examine the final and arguably most crucial piece of this puzzle. We've established the turbulent history, the undeniable data, and the modernized sound.
But none of this matters without the ultimate arbiters of this revival, the listeners.
Right, the people who are actually sweating on the dance floor right now, consuming this hybrid digital physical experience.
This is where the cultural reporting from 786 Music provides its most valuable insight. Being based in Miami, which is a massive global hub for electronic music, they document the audience perspective from the absolute ground level.
They are watching the crowds react in real time.
Their entire perspective on the modern audience is framed around one fascinating guiding philosophy from the publisher. Their core motto is, "The vibe is the only rule."
So what does this all mean? When I read that phrase in the source material, I had to stop and push back on it.
Really? Why?
The vibe is the only rule. An active, deliberate rejection of that old school gatekeeping we talked about earlier. The exact snobbery that caused the genre's original backlash and death.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Because if the vibe is genuinely the only rule, does that mean the 2026 audience fundamentally cares less about genre purism and more about just the raw, immediate experience of the music?
This raises an important question about how generational shifts completely rewrite the rules of cultural consumption. What 7086 Music is documenting in Miami reflects a much broader shift across all of 2026 underground culture.
Think about the modern listener. The audience today grew up with infinite simultaneous access to every genre of music ever recorded via streaming platforms.
They don't have the same strict tribal boundaries that fans in the 90s had. Back then, you were strictly a techno person or strictly a house person, and you defended those borders aggressively.
Your entire identity was tied to a single subgenre, and if you liked the wrong track, you lost your underground credibility.
Today, those borders have collapsed. So when the publisher observes that the vibe is the only rule, they are documenting a profound freedom among the modern audience.
It gives the listener permission to embrace a once taboo, commercially burned out genre like progressive house without carrying a single ounce of the historical baggage.
The 22-year-old on the dance floor today does not care that this music was considered sellout pop 15 years ago.
Not at all. They only care that the modern 2026 production of it sounds incredibly visceral right now, in this room, rattling their chest on this sound system.
It is like this generation of listeners has been granted full amnesty from music history. They get to just close their eyes, feel the bass, and completely ignore the cultural politics of the past.
That amnesty is the secret ingredient that allows the genre to truly resurrect. The underground legitimized progressive house again by simply deciding that the past doesn't matter if the present moment feels right.
They prioritize the raw experience over the intellectual snobbery.
That is an incredibly liberating way to consume art. Let's zoom out and pull all these threads together from our deep dive today.
Good idea. We started with this rich ground-level data from 786 Music out of Miami, tracking the turbulent life cycle of progressive house.
We saw it go from a gritty 90s origin to an absolute commercial burnout where its soul was stripped away for radio play, leading to it being exiled by the underground.
But then we learned that the time in exile was necessary. It allowed the toxic topsoil to wash away.
And in 2026, it returned, heavily backed by hard, undeniable streaming numbers, global festival bookings, and Beatport chart data that proved the physical crowds were actually moving to it again.
But it didn't return as a dusty ghost. It returned with a modern electric engine under the hood.
Exactly. It utilized entirely new independent production techniques, spatial audio, granular synthesis, extreme clarity that make it sonically relevant for massive modern sound systems.
And all of this was embraced by a post-genre 2026 audience that has actively decided to prioritize the vibe and the raw physical experience over old-school gatekeeping.
It serves as a textbook example of cultural resilience. It proves that a medium can adapt to its environment and survive its own destruction.
And for you, the listener, the relevance of this deep dive extends far beyond electronic music. It proves that cultural trends are endlessly, predictably cyclical.
Right. The next time you see a trend, whether it's a piece of consumer tech, a fashion style, or an aesthetic that society has aggressively deemed uncool, cringe, or entirely dead, do not write it off completely.
It might just be in its dormant phase. It might just be resting, shedding its toxic baggage, and gestating its 2.0 version.
Waiting for the exact right moment to drop a modern engine into that vintage chassis. History consistently shows us that today's punchline is very often tomorrow's pioneer, provided it knows how to adapt to the new roads.
Very well said.
Which leaves us with one final, lingering thought for you to explore on your own today. We've established that a genre can literally die from massive commercialization, be buried for years, only to be resurrected and legitimized by the cutting-edge underground decades later.
So look around at the world today.
Exactly. What massive, inescapable mainstream obsession. Right now, the thing you are totally sick of hearing about is destined to become the cool underground revival of the 2040s.
Will today's exhausted burnout be tomorrow's ultimate vibe?
Think about that friend from the funeral who came back to headline the festival. What is sitting in plain sight right now, just waiting for its resurrection?